January 11, 2011, a federal courthouse in San Francisco. 5 lawyers in expensive suits sit on one side of the room. They represent one of the most valuable electronics companies on the planet. On the other side of the room sits a 21-year-old who writes code out of his parents' house in New Jersey. He has no lawyer. He has $32 to his name. The judge has just signed an order that almost no court in the country has ever signed. It is a subpoena. It does not ask for the kid's hard drive. It asks for something stranger. It demands every single internet address that ever clicked play on his videos. Not the kid, his audience. Every stranger who watched. The lawyers think they are watching the end of a problem. A loud, clever boy who embarrassed their company is about to be made quiet. They are wrong about almost everything in the room, because this kid has already done 2 things the world swore were impossible. At 17, he took a screwdriver to a kitchen table and cracked open the most hyped phone in history, a device sealed shut by the most valuable company alive. Then he walked up to the one machine the entire global hacking community had publicly given up on, and he broke that too. And within 90 days of these lawyers walking into this courtroom, the decision to crush him will detonate into one of the worst corporate disasters in the history of technology. So, 3 questions. How does a kid alone in a bedroom open machines that armies of engineers built to stay closed? Why does the moment a giant decides to step on him become the moment the giant destroys itself? And what kind of person physically cannot leave a locked thing alone? To answer any of that, you have to go back, past the lawsuit, past the phone, to a boy who looked at a sealed object the way other people look at a dare. His name is George Hotz. He grows up in Glen Rock, New Jersey. It is the kind of quiet suburb engineered so that nobody ever makes headlines. Tidy lawns, good schools, a place designed to produce dentists and accountants, not problems. By his early teens, he is enrolled at the Bergen County Academies, the kind of magnet school that collects prodigies the way other schools collect detention slips. And even in a building full of gifted kids, he stands out for the wrong reasons. While his classmates are coding small video games, Hotz is in a corner wiring together a homemade 3-dimensional imaging rig out of spare parts. He gives it a name. He calls it, "I want a holodeck." He carries that machine to the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair. He walks out with $20,000 in scholarship money and his face on national television. There is footage of him, a string bean teenager, explaining motion capture to a morning news anchor, talking fast, half bored, like a kid who has already solved this and is mildly annoyed you haven't caught up. That is who he is before the world ever hears his name. But the science fair is not the important part. The important part is smaller, and you can see it in how he treats every object he touches. To most people, a closed device is just a closed device. To Hotz, it is an unfinished conversation. Closed equals broken. Sealed equals temporary. He does not see locks as endings. He sees them as questions somebody forgot to answer. And that single wiring of the brain, harmless in a science classroom, is about to point itself at the 2 largest companies he will ever meet. In the summer of 2007, the world hands him the perfect lock. You probably remember the launch. Lines around the block. Late-night jokes. A slab of glass from the most valuable company in the world, sold like a relic. There is one rule baked into every single unit. You can pay $600 and the phone is yours, but you can only use it on one carrier, AT&T, in the United States. That is the deal. You own the object, and somebody else owns what it is allowed to do. It is a leash, dressed up as a luxury product. Hotz is 17. He looks at the leash and starts unscrewing it. For 5 weeks, in the gap between high school and a part-time job, he barely leaves his bedroom. He has the device, a stack of online forums, an eyeglass screwdriver, and a guitar pick to pry the case apart without cracking it. He maps the board by hand. He hunts down the one chip standing between him and the open network, a tiny processor that does nothing but enforce the carrier lock. And he realizes something. If he can send one controlled jolt of voltage to a single pin on that chip, at exactly the right instant, the lock will not check who the phone belongs to. For one moment, the phone will simply forget what it is supposed to obey. He solders the wires. He runs his code. He slides in a SIM card from a different network. It works. In the early hours of a summer morning, in a New Jersey bedroom, the first unlocked iPhone on Earth boots up on a network it was never meant to touch. And Hotz does what any teenager does. He films it. He uploads it. Within hours, it is everywhere. Within a week, The most valuable company on the planet has been beaten by a kid at a kitchen table. Sit with the size of that. By 2007, Apple is not a business. Apple is a religion with a stock chart. And a teenager with $20 of tools just told the whole world that the new sacred object can be opened with a screwdriver. The reaction is not what you would expect. No lawyers show up at his door. A businessman does. A man from a phone repair company drives all the way to New Jersey and offers Hotz a sports car and 3 more iPhones in exchange for the unlocked unit. Hotz hands over the phone and drives away in a Nissan 350Z, 17 years old, with a license still warm in his wallet. And then, weeks later, a quiet email lands in his inbox. The sender is Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, the original tinkerer, the man who built the company in a garage by opening every machine he could find. Wozniak does not threaten him. Wozniak congratulates him. Hold on to that email. It comes back at the end. Now, back to the kid who just beat a phone, and the one machine the entire world swore could never be cracked. The phone, even broken open, is not enough for him. A phone is simple. A few chips, a battery, a lock. He wants the machine the hacking world has been failing to crack for years. The PlayStation 3. By 2009, the PS3 is the white whale of the hacking world. The Xbox has fallen. The Wii has fallen. Every other console ever shipped has been peeled open and modified by somebody, somewhere. The PS3 has been on shelves for 3 years, and not one person has touched its core. The reason is engineering. Sony has wrapped the machine in layers: encryption, a hypervisor, signed code, hardware fuses. To break in, you do not have to defeat one defense. You have to defeat a stack of them, each one watching the others. The community has tried for years. The community has lost. And there is one detail buried inside that machine that almost nobody is thinking about yet. Until now, every PS3 ships with a feature called OtherOS. It lets the owner install Linux on the console, turn it into a real computer, run scientific code, do whatever they want with the hardware they paid for. Universities buy racks of them and wire them into supercomputers on the cheap. It is the purest expression of the idea Hotz already believes. The thing you bought is yours. Remember that feature. It matters later. So here is the question. What happens when the kid who cannot leave a lock alone walks up to the only console nobody has ever opened? In December 2009, Hotz writes a short blog post. In effect, it says, "Hold my drink. He is going after the PS3. 5 weeks later, he posts an update. He has a hardware exploit. He has found a way, in his own description, to use a tiny physical hole in the machine and stretch it into a software hole large enough to walk through. He has read and write access to the system's memory. He has high-level control of the processor. He has done what no one on Earth has done. He is 20 years old. He publishes the work in public, not for piracy, and he is clear about that, the way he has always been clear. He believes a thing you bought is a thing you own, and a thing you own is a thing you are allowed to open. He hands the exploit out as a gift to the people who already paid $400 for the box on their living room floor. Apple sent congratulations. Sony does not. Sony's answer arrives a few weeks later, as a mandatory firmware update. And the update does not just patch the hole Hotz found. It reaches into every PlayStation 3 on the planet and strips out the OtherOS feature, the Linux option, the one that let people use the hardware they had legally bought. Sit with what just happened, because this is the moment the war changes shape. To close the door one kid opened, Sony has chosen to break the property of every honest customer it has. The kid is one person. The customers are millions. And millions are watching. The backlash hits fast. Owners are furious. A class action lawsuit is filed against Sony itself. Universities watch the clusters they built die overnight. Air Force researchers who had stitched a supercomputer together out of consumer consoles lose part of their hardware to a corporate decision they had no vote in. Forums fill with screenshots of the update prompt, and one question repeated in 20 languages. Is the thing I paid for still mine? The company has just turned a lone bedroom hacker, and then, in the middle of 2010, something nobody predicts happens. Hotz quits. Exhausted by the attention, the inbox, the constant pressure to do it again, he posts a goodbye. He says he is done with the PS3. He thanks the community. He logs off. For the first time, the story looks finished. The kid won. The company punished its own customers. The kid retired with the trophy and walked away clean. it is not finished. It is barely begun, because the kill shot is not going to come from him at all. Somewhere in Europe, a small group of hackers nobody has heard of yet has been quietly reading Sony's code, line by line, looking for one mistake. And they are about to find it. Not a small mistake. A mistake so deep that the entire security of the PlayStation 3 collapses like a rotten beam. December 2010, the Chaos Communication Congress in Berlin, the biggest stage in the hacking world. A group calling itself Fail0verflow steps up to the microphone, and with the calm of people reading out a math proof, they explain that Sony has made a mistake. It works like this. Inside the PS3, there is a signing system, the part that checks whether a piece of code is allowed to run. Every time it signs something, the system is supposed to generate a fresh random number, a different one, every single time. That random number is the spine of the entire security model. As long as it keeps changing, the lock holds. The master key stays hidden, forever. But if that number ever repeats, the whole thing falls apart. Because once it repeats, the secret master key can be calculated, pulled straight out of the public signatures, using nothing more exotic than high school algebra. Sony did not generate a fresh number each time. Sony wrote one number into the code, a single fixed value, and used it for everything. They called it random. It never changed. That one line of laziness means the master key to the entire PlayStation 3 can be derived by anyone with a notebook and an afternoon. And it means the console is not just broken. It is permanently, mathematically unfixable. Any real patch would have to be burned into the silicon, and the silicon is already sitting in living rooms all over the world. George Hotz watches that talk, and the retirement ends. Days later, on his personal website, he publishes the master key, a long, scrolling string of hexadecimal characters that is, in plain terms, the deed to Sony's entire kingdom. The internet downloads it. Within hours, copies have spread to thousands of sites in dozens of countries. There is no putting this back in the box. There never will be. And then Hotz does one more thing, something that, even by his standards, is a deliberate provocation. He records a rap track. He aims it at Sony's lawyers, at the company's executives, at the whole posture of the corporation, and he posts it. The kid is openly laughing at the giant, on the giant's own internet. The giant decides it has had enough. In January 2011, Sony Computer Entertainment America files suit. The complaint carries his name. It pleads violations of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, computer fraud, copyright infringement, breach of contract, a stack of claims that, piled together, could ruin him for the rest of his life. 5 lawyers against one 21-year-old who can barely afford a hard drive. That is the visible escalation. The invisible one is worse. Sony goes to a federal magistrate and asks for something that should never have been granted. They ask for the server logs of his personal blog, every IP address that ever loaded the page where he posted the keys. They ask for the same from his YouTube account, every person who ever pressed play on the rap video. They ask for his PayPal records, his Twitter, his Google account. And they get it. The order goes through. Read that carefully, because this is the moment the case stops being about a console. Sony's lawyers are now in a position to assemble a list of every member of his audience. Every stranger who watched a kid mock a corporation has just been reduced, by a federal court order, to a row on a spreadsheet that Sony can demand answers from. To make it uglier, Sony also tells the court that Hotz has fled the country, that he is hiding in South America to dodge the case. He has done no such thing. He flew to a security conference, gave a talk, and came home. The accusation is quietly dropped later. The damage is already done. You are watching a corporation try to bully a child and his entire audience into silence at the same time. He has no money. He has no real legal team. One Sony lawyer bills more per hour than he has ever earned. He is being asked to fight a war of attrition that he cannot win. And then the thing Sony did not plan for happens. The internet turns. Once the lawsuit goes public, donation pages go up. Strangers from all over the world wire him money to hire real lawyers. The amount is nothing to Sony. It is enormous to him. Suddenly he has a defense. Forums, gaming sites, the mainstream tech press, all of them start changing the language. A story that opened as a hacker dispute is now being told as a question about property. Whether the console on your shelf is actually yours. Whether 30 seconds of fine print in an agreement nobody reads can quietly mean that it isn't. The names of Sony's lawyers start showing up in news articles, printed next to the price of the order they obtained. The audience the corporation tried to map has just remembered that it is public. Then a much larger force takes notice. A loose collective of online activists, the kind the world is still learning how to spell, calls itself anonymous. They have a habit of picking fights with institutions they believe have overreached. In early 2011, they publish a statement. They name Sony as a target. They say the company has victimized its own customers, that it has tried to censor the truth about how its own products work. And they say they are going to make that decision expensive. Then they start hitting. The attacks drown Sony's websites in traffic until the sites fall over. Online stores blink offline. Customer service pages stop loading. Corporate sites go dark. The pressure is constant, distributed, and very public. Every article about the lawsuit now ends with the fact that the company is being publicly bombarded over it. You can almost hear the boardroom recalculating the cost of pursuing a 21-year-old. But the math for Hotz personally is still brutal. The case can drag on for years. Each motion costs more than he can raise. Each new filing exposes more of his data, and the data of his audience. Stretching the war out does not just risk bankrupting him, it risks pulling thousands of people who only clicked a video into Sony's discovery files. The vice tightens until there is only one move left that protects everybody else. In April 2011, George Hotz signs a settlement. He agrees to a permanent injunction, barring him from ever touching a Sony product again. He agrees never to publish work on Sony hardware again. He agrees, in legal effect, to lay his sword down. The papers go out under headlines that read like a corporate victory. The kid blinked. The giant won. The system worked. That is the shape of it from the outside. From inside the moment, you can see the trade he is actually making. He is giving up his own right to fight in order to protect the people who fought beside him. He is being asked, by a system he has no way to beat in a courtroom, to make himself silent. And he does it. On paper, the war is over. Sony has its win. And then Sony finds out what its win actually costs. Less than a week after the settlement, the PlayStation Network goes dark. In the third week of April 2011, Sony's engineers detect that someone has gotten inside the network that hosts 77 million customer accounts. It is not a probe, it is a tear, straight through the perimeter. Names, addresses, dates of birth, email accounts, the encrypted password hashes of millions of people. Pulled out, Sony does what any company does in that moment. It pulls the plug. It takes the entire PlayStation Network offline, worldwide, for days, then a week, then 2, then 23 days. Every PlayStation owner on Earth is locked out. No online play, no store, no chat. The world's most expensive entertainment service goes completely silent. When the bill is finally tallied, it runs to roughly $171 million in direct costs, on top of a loss of public trust that no spreadsheet can really price. At the time, it is one of the largest consumer data breaches the industry has ever seen. Now read the next part carefully, because the whole story dies if it gets blurred. The breach is never publicly attributed to George Hotz. He had nothing to do with it. He says so plainly. On the record, he condemns it. Even Anonymous, the collective that had been openly bombarding Sony, denies stealing the data. The people who actually broke in have never been definitively identified, to this day. What is documented is the climate the breach happened in. Sony lit a firestorm by suing a kid. The firestorm pulled every grudge on the internet toward a single target. And somewhere inside that fire, an intrusion succeeded that the company might otherwise have shrugged off, or never invited at all. Sony won its case against one curious 21-year-old. And then it lost a number no court would ever have ordered him to pay. Now look at the opening image again. The 5 lawyers. The judge signing away the IP addresses. The kid at his parents' house with $32. The giant in that picture was never crushing a child. The giant was detonating itself. The consequences deserve to be named honestly, because none of this was free. Sony's reputation takes years to recover. The Linux feature, stripped out of millions of consoles to close one hole, never comes back. George Hotz can never legally speak about Sony hardware again, for the rest of his life. And the court order over his audience stands as a precedent the internet does not forget. A moment when watching a video could quietly make you part of a corporate discovery file. The reactions never settle into anything clean. To some people, he is a vandal who picked a fight and got an entire network burned. To others, he is the only honest party in the whole affair. A kid who told the truth about a machine and got buried for it. The argument does not resolve. It just keeps going. In comment sections, in courtrooms, in the fine print of every device sold since. And the kid himself does not vanish. The same establishment that watched him dragged into federal court walks up to him afterward and offers him a chair at its own table. Google hires him onto an elite security team called Project Zero, the unit that hunts the exact kind of flaw he used to find for fun. He stays only as long as he wants to. Then he leaves and founds his own company, a self-driving car startup he runs out of a garage in San Francisco. Because to him, a car is just another locked system, and he intends to open it. He builds a prototype in a month. He sells kits over the internet, so that anyone can turn the car they already own into something smarter. The same instinct. Scaled up. The thing you bought is yours, and yours includes the right to teach it new tricks. Which brings us back to the email. Years before the lawsuit, before the breach, before any of it, the co-founder of Apple sat down and wrote to a 17-year-old to say congratulations. The original tinkerer, recognizing the next one. Wozniak had built his whole life on a single idea. That a thing you bought is a thing you are allowed to understand. That a lock is a conversation and not an ending. And he looked at a kid with a screwdriver and saw it again. They could lock down every chip they ever shipped. They could not lock down a curious mind. And the moment they tried, they proved it, on a scale they will never live down. The thing you bought is yours. And somewhere out there, right now, there is another teenager opening another lock. The next time the giants find out what curiosity cost them, you already know who is going to be holding the screwdriver.